All right, so if you go to this website called flutter.dev, you'll see a nice little website, so basically what Flutter is, it is a tool to create applications. So that includes mobile applications, it includes web applications, it includes widgets, it includes smartwatch applications. So that's what Flutter is. Now, of course, Flutter itself is only one tool, but to build the entire application stack is what we call it. You need multiple tools to achieve that. And so in these sessions, we will be teaching a lot of students how to use all these tools, how to integrate them together to build the entire application. So this is called the full stack, which means all the technologies together to form the entire application. So maybe you've heard of the term front-end developer or back-end developer. These are just two terms to refer to people who work on the front end, which is the UI, the user interface. So all these visual things that you see. And then there's also the back end, and these are the processes that sit on the cloud that communicate with the front end to make the entire application work. So that's what front end and back end is. Now, what we'll be teaching here is everything front end and back end applications. So the good place to start is to start with this tool here called Flutter. So again, if you go to this website, flutter.dev, you'll see this Get Started button. And when you click on that, it's going to ask you to choose your development platform. So if you have a Windows computer, you can click on that one, Mac OS, or any of these two. So I've got a Mac OS, but if you have a Windows computer, you can just click on that one. And then it's going to ask you what's your first type of app that you want to develop. So it doesn't really matter. This is just kind of a survey. So you can click on any one. But each one of these is just going to give you a bit of a different tutorial on how to set it up for the different platforms, but the download file is going to be the same. So what you then do is you download this zip folder here to install Flutter. And so this is just going to take a while. It's about 1.6 gig in size. I'm just going to cancel it here. And that will give you access to install Flutter. And you'll have to follow all these instructions depending on your platform to install it. And if you have any questions, if you struggle to install it, because it can get a little tricky sometimes, especially if you're new to things like environment variables, then you just shoot us a message and I can help you out with that. And if you've joined the Slack channel, you can also ask your questions in the Slack channel. And I'm sure there will be a lot of people who can help you install Flutter and Dart. So this is what Flutter is. The other thing you also would want to install is called VS Code. So if you go to code.visualstudio.com, it looks like this. It is basically a program called an IDE, Interactive Development Environment, IDE. And this is like a fancy text editing software. Kind of think about Word, think about Notepad. It's like a fancy little place where you can type in your code and execute it. So this is what VS Code is. It also comes with this fancy tool called Copilot, which is like an AI assistant. And it can help you with your coding experience as well. But for beginners, I would advise not to use Copilot at all because it can slow down your learning journey, because you don't want anything to think for you, because if you use something that's going to think for you, you're just going to learn slower. So you can download it here and you select again your environment. So Windows, Linux or Mac. And I think it's just an installer when you download it for Windows. And it looks like this. So it's going to look like this. Once you have VS Code, which is this program, what it's called, once you have this installed, what you want to do is you want to install the extensions. So if you go to these four blocks icon here, then you type in Flutter. There'll be an install option here. It will look like this, like that. So you want to install this one by dartco.org. Just click on install. And then you also want to check that you have this one installed called Dart. So once you have these two tools installed, what they allow you to do is this allows VS Code, which is this program, to support this programming language called Dart that you'll be using, and this tool called Flutter that you'll be using. So these are essential. Now, I have provided in the Slack, or I will soon, a link to my, let me just show you what I mean. In Slack, I've provided this link, or if I haven't yet, I will do that. And in this link, you will see basically this place called GitHub. If you click on Flutter there, and you click on Flutter, I think it's Notes, yeah, Flutter Notes, and you click on Get Started with Flutter, there's actually a step-by-step sort of guide here that I wrote that will help you install Flutter on your system and help you get started. So I just showed you have to install VS Code. You also want to install Flutter. There's also this tool you want to install called Android Studio. And this is not necessary if you're only going to do web development, but if you want to use what's called emulators, an emulator is I've provided a Wikipedia link here if you're not sure what these terms mean. So if you just click on that, it will show you what an emulator is. And an emulator is basically a virtual device on your computer that runs. So not a real device. So not for example, it can run like an iPhone inside of your computer. So it's a fake iPhone. It's not a real iPhone. And then you can actually run your application on that false iPhone that's on your computer. So if you install Android Studio, it's going to give you a nice tool that allows you to install the latest Android devices, Android emulators. So that's quite useful. If you want to run like apps for iOS, but you're on a Windows computer, that's a little tricky. Typically, if you want to develop applications for iOS, you will need a Mac OS, a Mac computer. But there are ways to get around that. That's not covered in this this getting started guide that I provided here. But perhaps I'll put that in. So I will provide you with this link in the Slack. Just give me a second. We'll figure this out later. And we'll also provide it, if we put it on YouTube, we'll put it on the YouTube comments as well. So once we have everything installed, you can go to your terminal. Now, my terminal looks like this, but if you're on Windows, you can use Command Prompt. So just go to the search bar on Windows. I think just click on the Windows icon somewhere below here, and you just type in CMD, and then you open Command Prompt. Now on Mac, I've got this terminal called Kitty, but you can use any terminal. If you want to see Flutter is installed, you can just go Flutter version. And that should give you something like this. It should say Flutter 3.35 or whatever version you have. It should say channel stable. It should give you a link to the repository. And that's how you know it's installed. Now, if it's not installed, it will just say something like Flutter is an invalid command or something like that. And so you can check, okay, you've got this version installed, Flutter 3.35.0. And so if you just type in Flutter versions, and you look at this, you can see that 3.35.0 is the latest version because it's at the top of this list. So that's how you kind of know if you're up to date with the latest version. You can also use this command Flutter upgrade, and that's going to keep your Flutter up to date. So it's actually going to upgrade it for me now to the version 3.35.1, which is actually the latest version. It seems like they haven't updated their website yet. So that's just going to install. And once you've followed this tutorial here, you're pretty much ready to start with your Flutter journey. So again, I'll provide the link to this document in the description in the YouTube channel and also on Slack for the students that are in Slack. You also want to install what's called Git, and you want to log into GitHub as well. So for you who are new to this, what Git is a version control system. And what that means is, imagine you make changes to your code constantly. How are you going to keep track of those changes? What if you make a mistake and you want to go back to a previous version of your application or a previous state of your application? Imagine you mess up, for example, and you want to undo those changes. How are you going to manage that? And so this tool called Git is what we developers use to manage that. So it's also something you have to install. So on Windows, the link is here. So you would use the setup here, or this one, depending on your CPU. Once you've installed that, and you need to configure it, so just verify that it's installed. You can put these commands in your terminal, and then you can also look at, you also want to sign into or create an account here. So this, if you go to github.com and you go to the top right corner here, there should be, or if you actually just go to this website, just create an account that allows you to, it's basically like a fancy version of Google Drive that allows you to store your code in here. So once you've done that, where am I? Once you've done that, you can run this command here. And just follow these instructions again. And you can also, if you go into VS Code, so again, this is this program here. At the bottom left corner here, it says accounts. You also want to sign in with your GitHub account here, because GitHub is also a Microsoft product, and so is VS Code. So these two communicate really well together. And once you've signed into GitHub with VS Code, you're all set. So then you can actually go to this little icon here that says source control, and it should look something like this. And that allows you to now save your project to your cloud. And this cloud is called GitHub. So if you look at mine, for example, see here's one of my GitHub accounts. or I can go here. This is my other GitHub account, and you can see that I've got a bunch of projects that I shared. Now, if you create a new project, and here it's called a repository, it can either be private or public. So as you can see, these ones are public because, sorry, this one is public. It says public, public. This one is private, meaning that you need to be logged into my account if you want to see this one. But for example, if I go into an incognito tab, which means I'm not going to be logged in. So this is my public. I've got 11 public repositories that people can just have a look at. But if you actually look here, actually have 42 in total because a lot of them are private, only visible to me. So again, this is just like a fancy version of Google Cloud that allows you to look at all, to store all your projects, not just all your projects, but also your project history. So every change you've made is also stored in here. So if I go to, for example, this project here, this is not a good example. Let's go to, say, this one. Not a good example either. Just trying to find one that's a better example. Okay, here's a better example. Here's a project that I made. It's got one file in there, and it says here are 6 commits. So it means I changed this 6 times. That's what it means. So as you can see here, it gives me the history of my project. So this is what I initially, all this green stuff is what I initially added to this file. And then you'll see on the second time, all this red is what I deleted. And then this green is what I added again. So basically you can keep track of all the adds and deletes of all your files. Okay. Give me 1 second. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. Does this make sense so far? Yeah. What do you think, Frank? Does it make sense to you
It
so
does.
far?
Oh yes, you can proceed. That's the way to go.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but the bottom line is that there are a bunch of tools that you need to set up that communicate together and that we use together in order to create an application. So there's a few things you want to do, of course, and this is why I've provided this document, and then I'm also updating it. So I'll add a few things to it. So as you can see, this document itself is in a GitHub repository. So this allows me to make changes to it constantly, and then you can actually see all the changes that I've made to it as I'm changing it. So you can put documents in GitHub, you can put code in GitHub, anything really, you can put in here, and it allows you to keep track of all your changes. It also allows people to, multiple people to contribute. And this is really useful because imagine you've got an entire team of developers. Everyone can make changes and make updates, and you can keep track of all that information at once, and you can go back to previous versions, and you can discard changes, etc. It's a really cool tool, and if you want to know more about it, about GitHub and Git, I would advise you to Google it and figure out and really read about it, because there's actually way more to it than I've just described. But the bottom line is, it's a fancy way to keep track of your changes, and GitHub is a fancy version of Google Drive. So that's what that is. So I've got a question for you, Jovia. Have you set up Flutter on your computer yet?
I have.
Okay, you have. Perfect, perfect. So you've probably gone through a lot of these things already. And sometimes it can get intimidating, especially if you are new to development and you need to set up your environment, and you don't really know what's going on. You don't really know why you have to put in all these commands in your terminal, what all these tools are. But sometimes if you want to get started in something, you just have to accept that you're not going to know or understand everything in the beginning, but hopefully in time, as you continue on your journey, you sort of start understanding what everything is. So awesome. And so if you actually go to this repository, I've also provided here a little README, and I'll update it again, which is just some information on what we'll learn in this Zero to Full Stack Hero series. And just keep this maybe in your bookmarks, and then have a look at it every week or so as we update it, because I will be adding a lot of new content here and information here that will help you on your journey. So once we've got all that installed and we've got Flutter set up, what we can do is we can create a new project. So I've mentioned here in the my Flutter notes here, that to not create a folder on your desktop necessarily, sometimes it can give you some issues. Not always, but sometimes it can, because if you have some cloud service like Google Drive, iCloud, or OneDrive on your computer that basically saves the files from your computer on your cloud, if you create a project on your desktop, that cloud syncing can sometimes interfere with your it can sometimes interfere, which will cause some of your projects not to always, it just doesn't run for some reason. It throws you an error sometimes if you want to run it. So I do advise you to create your projects in some kind of folder on your computer that does not sync with Google Drive or iCloud or OneDrive. So on my computer, I create my projects. I've got a special projects folder that I created that is not being synced with OneDrive or Google Drive. The other thing you also want to be sure is, it's just a good idea not to store your files or your code in Google Drive. It's better to store it in a secure system like GitHub, because imagine you've got very sensitive code, you've got a whole application that you developed, and it sits somewhere on your Google Drive. If someone hacks your Google Drive or gets password to your Google account, that's a problem. Now, GitHub itself is slightly more secure than Google Drive, especially when it comes to coding. And also, GitHub provides bots that constantly scans your code and scans other repositories to see if people maybe copy your code, or see if there are maybe some security keys that got exposed, etc. So I do advise you very strongly to make sure that your projects do not get synced to GitHub or to OneDrive or Google Drive or any of your drives. Make sure there's somewhere that actually will not get synced there. So that's why I created this projects folder on my computer, and I keep all my Flutter projects like here. So to start a new project, I typically start with creating a new folder. I'm going to call this Dart Basics. And then on Mac, you can just drag this folder inside of your VS Code icon here, and it's going to open this folder in VS Code. But if you're on Windows, you can just say File, Open Folder, and then you select your folder. You say Open, and then it's just going to open the folder in VS Code. So a project in VS Code is, think about it as just a folder. So once you've created your folder, we can start by creating a new Dart application. So depending on whether you want to create a Flutter or Dart application, you can use two different commands. The first would be Flutter create, and then we can use this dot, which means that we want to create a Flutter app inside of this folder called Dart Basics. But since you are new to Flutter, let's create a Dart application. So we need to do /force. So it just tells us if we want to create a application in a folder that already exists, we need to provide this flag here called force. So as you can see, it creates a bunch of files inside of this folder. So if you're not sure what Dart is and what the difference between Dart and Flutter is, Dart is the language used to create Flutter applications. So Flutter is a tool to create UI and front end apps. Dart is basically a tool to create. It's the language. It's the language is called Dart. So think about it like think about it like this. You want to write an essay or a story about, say, I don't know, a novel. You want to write a novel about some boy in Africa that pursues some kind of career or something and then becomes a very becomes a millionaire. You want to write some kind of story. Now, the process of writing does not depend on the language you use to write. So in that case, the language is say English, and then the process of creating that book, writing that book, is called is like Flutter. So the language we're going to use, instead of English, we're going to use this language called Dart, D-A-R-T. And then the actual tools that we're going to use is called Flutter. So that's what we're going to be doing. So I'm just going to start with a basic application here, if that makes sense. Hey, Ifat, how you doing? So yeah.
Hi.
Hi, welcome.
Hi.
I know you
Thank
are already
you.
an experience, or you already have experience with Flutter. I was just starting from the basics again here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. If you can, feel free to stay along. We're working on our communication just to reach
Okay.
out to more students.
Yeah.
Last time, because I didn't make it, they probably annoyed a lot of students, and they weren't sure if I was going to rock up this time, so they didn't show up either, which is fair enough.
Yeah.
But I was just explaining to Jovia here just some of the basics. So
Okay.
I'm sure you know a lot of it already, but I will talk about project structure and maybe Navigator in the second part.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you stay along, we'll talk about Flutter in a moment. I'm just talking about Dart a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. So as you can see, after I run this command called dart create dot /force, it creates me a bunch of folders here and files. We have changelog.md, pubspec.log, pubspec.yaml, readme.md. We've got this test folder here. We got lib, we got dart, we got dart tool. Now this can all get intimidating, but don't let it intimidate you. I will tell you what all this is. So this folder .dart tool is an auto-generated folder, meaning that you don't worry about it. It's used by Dart and Flutter internally, and you can actually delete it if you want to. All that's going to do is it's going to regenerate. So every time you type this command, Flutter, dart pub get, you'll see it's just going to regenerate that Dart tool. Even if I delete this and I run my app, it's just going to regenerate it again. So sometimes I delete this folder if there's some kind of issue with my application, it doesn't want to run. It could be that this information is outdated that's in here. And so remember that folder is, because it starts with a dot, it's supposed to be hidden, and it's just something that is used internally by Dart. So you don't really have to worry about this. This is just something that's used internally. We have a few other folders here. We've got this git ignore folder. And as you can look in this folder, it's got this thing in there called Dart tool. Now what git ignore is, it says that ignore this folder. Don't right. So what git ignore is, it's a way of telling Git, which we spoke about earlier. So Git again is that version control system. It's a way of saying ignore everything that's in this folder. Don't include it into our project. So this means that this folder is only used locally on our machine. It's actually not saved to the cloud at all. So because this is an auto-generated folder, we don't really care about keeping track of its contents. So you can actually type other things in there if you want to. If you want to ignore the README, which is okay, you don't want to do that. But say I want to ignore. I'm going to create a new file here. I'm going to call local or passwords. Okay, I created this folder called passwords.md. I also want to ignore this folder. So if I put that in there, what's going to happen is when I save this to my backend or to my cloud, to GitHub or something, it's going to ignore this folder or this file completely. It's not going to save this file. Maybe I want to just keep track of my, say, some of my passwords or something, but I don't actually want to save it to the back. I don't want to save it to the cloud because I don't want other people to know about this. So I can create this file here in my project, but then I also say, please ignore this file. Do not push this file to my backend. So you can create, you can list all the files or folders here that you do not want to include in on your backend. Oh, sorry, not your backend, your cloud, your GitHub or Git. You don't want them to be part of your version control system. You don't want them to be part of your history. So you can put anything in here. Okay. So imagine I say something like, I don't know, say Google, let's think of it. Say my SendGrid. So I just, I've got this service called SendGrid or whatever. It can be anything, Google or something, and I'm just putting all my passwords in here just for me to just keep track of while I develop, and then I ignore them. But this is a bit risky. I wouldn't even put my passwords in a file ever. I would put them in a different place. But hopefully I just illustrated to you that if you maybe want to put sensitive files in your project and you don't, or maybe large files or something, and you want to ignore them, you don't want to push them to your Git, then you can just add them to your Git ignore here. So that's what that is. And then we have this folder called analysisoptions.yaml. And here you can have a bit of a read. These are comments here. So all these green parts are comments. And this allows us to specify rules for our language. So for example, we can get back to this again, but basically we can specify when our application should, or how can I explain this in a better way? Let's think a little bit. You know what? I think I should get back to this after we talk about the language a little bit more, because this one is, I don't want to say it's complicated, but you need to understand the language before I can explain what this is. We have a readme.md. So MD is markdown format, and it is a fancy document format. So for example, I can do double hash. I can say readme, and I'll just show you something. I can right click on this in VS Code, and I can say open preview. And so I can put the preview there. And this is a fancy way of creating documents for your application. So I can say, hello there, as you can see there. And I can maybe make this bold by doing two asterisks. As you can see, that's bold. And I can do 3 like that. I can say how to install Flutter. So it's just a nice way to create documentations. That's what MD is, Markdown. I can even provide code like this. And as you can see, it does syntax highlighting for me. So that's what this is. So you can create a README file, which is just this, basically the first thing people are going to see when they look at this. Here, maybe you can put in notes on how to install the application, what the application is about, etc. We got this pubspec.lock file, which is also an automatically generated file. And I wouldn't delete this one like Dart.tool, but if I delete this one, for example, and I type in this command called Dart pub get, which is just a way to get all my dependencies from my application. It's just going to regenerate this file again. So there are some files and folders that's just going to regenerate every time, even if you delete them. So we have these folder called bin and lib and test. So if you look at the way this is structured, you'll see that this is a Dart file. And so that's the language that we are using to create our applications. So this is what's called a source file or source code. Then we have this lib folder here as well. So typically when we create an application, we put all our functions and things like that in the lib folder here. And then our main entry point of our application, we put in this thing called the bin folder, the binary folder. So as you can see, we've got this main function here in the bin, and then we've got this function here called calculate, which is just going to multiply 6 times 7 and return the result as an integer. And then we can call calculate here. So if we run this, I can just click on that run. It says hello world 42. All right, so you can always put both of these in the same. You can put both of these in the same file. You can actually delete the bin folder if you like, and just create. Just put it all together. So I can create my function here. Sorry. See. And so I'll just put my function in there. So as you can see, this is another way to structure your project. Give me 1 second. Just comment this out for now. So here now I removed the bin folder and I've put it all in this lib folder. You can also do that. So this is just a folder that contains your source code, really. And you'll see in Flutter application, we only have a lib folder. We typically don't have a bin folder as well. So, yeah. And then we've got this test folder. Now, a test folder is made to test part of our applications. So, for example, say I want to test to see if this calculate function actually, oh, it's spelled wrong. I want to test if this calculate function returns the right value. So here I can create a test. So you use this test package here. And this allows us to say, okay, run this function and ensure that it returns 42. So if I run this, I get see. If I run this by just clicking on the run there, here we go. It just gives me this green little check mark here, and it says that this function, and here as well, it says it executed properly and it expected 42, and I got 42. So that's what that is. So then we have this very important folder here called pubspec.yaml. And so here, this is basically a, when I put this command in here called dart pub get, this is a tool. Pub is a tool that is run on your system. It reads this file called pubspec.yaml. And here we can kind of define a few properties of the application. We can define the name of the application, description, the version of our application, and also which packages this application depends on. So if you don't know what a package is basically a set of code that is already written by someone or a company or Google or a person like me that is online, and that our project reads from it, basically downloads it from the internet and then adds it to our project. And we can use that to sort of enrich or extend our project. So our project uses this package called path, lints, and test. So as you can see here, if we go to this test folder here, it's saying import this package into our project and then use this function from this package. And where does this package lie? Well, basically, if we go here, we can see this package is actually stored in users, there, pubcache, hosted. This is the directory of where this package is stored. This is the definition of the function here. Okay. Now, where did they get that package from? So if I go to on the internet, and I go to pub.dev, dev. So this is a website that stores all our sort of packages, all the open source packages. And here you can see here's the test package. And basically what this does is it gets this package from this website, downloads it, puts it locally on our computer, and now we can use it. So there's many packages used in Flutter and Dart that's on this website here, and we can use them freely. But to use them, you have to put them inside. You have to reference them inside of your dependencies section in your pub/YAML, and then we have to run this command called dart pub get. Once we run it, you can see that it downloads all the packages that it needs to, and it stores them locally on your computer. Just give me 1 second. Sorry. So do I have any questions so far about project structure? Frank, how about you? Do you have any questions so far?
No,
We are good, actually.
You good? Okay.
Maybe Jovia?
No, I've got the basics. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so as you can see, I started with a Dart project here, which is, I think it's a good place to start. I don't think if you're new to Flutter and Dart, I think it's always good to start with Dart itself and not actually Flutter, because Flutter depends on Dart. You need to make sure that you understand Dart well before you even start with Flutter, I think, in my opinion. Just because there's a lot about Flutter, about Dart, that if you don't know it and you just start with Flutter, it can get sometimes quite confusing. So yeah, I would always start with this first. And I actually I've created a bunch of tools before that is Dart only. I don't even use Flutter. For example, think about this tool here called so if we go to our terminal and we type in dart pub get, this tool here itself is created in Dart. It's not even created in Flutter. So that's kind of cool. So let's do an example. Let's compile this into an application. So I'm going to say, if I say Dart run, okay. So if I actually say Dart run, I need a bin folder. So I'm just going to create a bin folder again, and I will put that in there. And again, I'm just going to take this main function out here. I'm going to put it in my bin folder. And then I need to reference this calculate function. So I'm going to import it. So I'm importing it from here, from my lib folder. And let's run this application. So if I run it, it says hello world 42. Now I can also compile this application. I think it's called, if you don't know how to compile an application, you just go Dart, you go double dash, and you say help. And this is going to give you a bunch of options. So the command is compile, meaning that we're going to take this application and we're going to convert it into a Dart binary. So we can say Dart compile. And then we have to select, like, what do we want to compile it to? A JavaScript file, an executable, kernel, a WebAssembly module. So we can go Dart compile exe, for example. Hold on. Oh, Dart compile exe, and then we can go O, and we can just call this Dart basics. Give me 1 second. I missed something here. All right, I need to put the entry. Okay, got it. So I just go Dart compile, and then I go Dart basics.dart. There we go. So what I just did was, if I can find it, where is it? Oh, I actually took this application that I just wrote and I made an executable from it. As you can see, this is just an executable file. So now what's kind of cool is I can run this application like this. I can just go Dart basics. I think on macOS you run it by saying, I forgot how to run an application on macOS. I think it's just dot. Let's see. There we go. So as you can see here, I'm not even using Flutter or Dart. I've actually created a standalone application by just running this, compiling this application, and then running it on its own, which is kind of cool. So Dart can also be used to create like terminal applications or console applications like this, or tools, which a lot of people don't really realize that you don't. A lot of Flutter developers only use Dart for Flutter, but Dart can actually be used for any kind of development. You can create all sorts of tools for it, and all the tools that come with Dart and Flutter, like the Flutter tool, Flutter or Dart, these are actually tools that are actually built in Dart itself, which is kind of cool, I think. Yeah. So, do you have any questions about this? No? Okay, cool. So yeah, this was just a brief overview of sort of the Dart project setup. And I think I will move on to Flutter next. So I was just thinking of creating a basic Flutter application with some navigation in it. What do you think, Ifat?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So let's move on to the second part, where I'm just going to talk about some a Flutter application now. So we've looked at a Dart application, some of the basics, and now let's just create a basic Flutter application that will just allow us to navigate from one screen to another. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to create a new Flutter project. I'm just going to say Flutter Navigator. Okay. So instead of typing in Dart create this time, I'm going to use the Flutter command line tool to create our application. So I'm going to say Flutter create dot. And so this is going to create us a Flutter project inside of this folder called Flutter Navigator. And as you can see, it creates a bunch of files and folders here for us. And so the first thing you notice, there is no bin folder here. It's only a lib folder, which is fine. It's just a different kind of setup. And let's look at the project structure again. We've got this idea file. We've got this .dart tool file. Remember I said this is auto-generated? Now this .idea is actually, if you're using the IntelliJ or Android Studio, then this is used. But we're using VS Code, so this thing is not used at all. We have Android, iOS, Linux, macOS, test, web, Windows. Now these are files specific to the platform that you compile your application in. So if you know that you're never going to compile your application to Linux, you're only going to create an application for Android or iOS or web, then you can actually go ahead and you can delete this completely, because we're not really going to build a Linux application. We also don't want to build a macOS application, so we can delete that. But we don't want to build a Windows application, we can delete that. For right now, I don't want to build an Android application, so I'm going to delete that. I don't want to build a macOS application, iOS either. I'm going to delete that. I only want to build a web application, so I'm going to keep that one. Again, I don't need this because I'm not using IntelliJ. I'm not going to create tests, so I'm just going to delete that for now. And so I'm actually simplifying my project here. This is also for IntelliJ, so I'm going to delete this as well. So now this looks more like our original Dart application. This is also for IntelliJ, so I'm going to delete this as well. And so now we've got a much simpler project. So let's have a look at the example project that's in Flutter. So if I just click on run there, give me 1 second. So if you want to run your application, you can just type in Flutter run. And then it's going to give you some options. Now, because we deleted the iOS and all those other folders, we just have one option here called Chrome. So you can just type in one. And then you'll see the application will run in the web browser in Chrome. In 1 second. Here we go. So all this does is it increases this counter. Okay. So what we want to do is we actually want to create maybe an application that we've got multiple pages. So say we want to create a basic login application or login flow, or imagine a to-do list app or something very simple that has multiple pages. So what we want to do is we want to navigate from one page to another. Now, there are many ways in Flutter to navigate from page to page. Today, I'll talk about Navigator 1.0. So the first sort of the most basic way, or one of the most basic ways to navigate from page to page. So let's set that up. So the first thing I will do is I'll just structure my project a little differently. So I will create a new folder here. That's our new file here. I'll call this main widget, the Dart. Okay. And then I'm going to move this entire thing here. Here, I'm just going to copy and paste it. Okay, so I just copied and pasted there. So I am going to then import, copy this import there. I'm just going to put it at the top here. Okay. So then I also need to reference this my app. I'm going to rename this to my widget, main widget. So if you right click on something and you say rename symbol, you can actually rename that a thing, and that's what I just did. So then here, I'm going to now import this file. So I go import main widget. Just make a semicolon. So now I'm importing this file and this one here. So next thing I want to do is I want to simplify this a little bit. So I've got this thing called my home page. I'm going to delete this entire page because we're going to have multiple pages. So let's just delete that. I'm also just going to delete this color scheme. I'm just going to leave it so that we can use the default color scheme. And I'm going to rename the title of our material app to, say, Flutter Navigator. Okay. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create different pages for our app. So I'm going to create a new folder here called Pages. And let's create 3 pages for our app. So I'm going to say, call this homepage. And I'm going to create a new one called, say, auth page for authentication. And I'm going to create a new one called notes page, or note list page. And let's create a new one called notes page. Oh, I created a folder there and not a file. So let's just create a folder. Oh, sorry, a file rather. All right, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 pages here of my app. So next, let's create all these pages. So the first one, we can type in st. So we're just going to create a stateful widget, sorry, stateless widget here, and we're just going to call this auth page. Okay. And then we're going to copy all of this. And I'm just going to create one called homepage. Okay. And then this one called note list page. And this one called note page. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 pages. Great. Next thing is I'm going to create an index file. So I'm going to say pages.dart. And I'm going to export all these 1, 2, 3, 4 pages here. And this will allow me to import them in one go. I'll show you what that means in 1 second. So I'm just going to say export. And I'm going to say auth page. Like that. And I'm going to do the same for the other 3. So the other one is called homepage. The other one is called note list page. And the other one is called note page. Okay, so I've got this index file here, or barrel file. So what I can do is I can now import just this thing called pages/pages.dart. So what I've done now is I'm importing this file called pages.dart, and it's exporting all of these 1, 2, 3, 4 files. So technically, I'm importing all these files here when I import this one file. And this just gives me a bit of a cleaner. It just allows me to make my app a little cleaner. It just looks a little nicer, but that's just my preference. You don't have to use an index file if you don't want to. You can manually import every single one like this, pages/auth page. If you want to manually import all 4 of those, you can do that, but I just like to do it this way. Okay. So the first thing is we're going to put, you've got this home widget here. We're going to put our home page there. Okay. And you'll see if we run our app now, it's just going to look like very basic. It's going to be it's just going to look like this because our home page is quite simple. It's just got a placeholder widget in it. So now how are we going to route from one page to another? So when you click on a button, it's going to go to the other page. So just give me 1 second. So I'm just looking at my notes here. Give me 1 second. I just all right. Someone join. Oh, that's okay. So if I do need to, you leaving? Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all right. We'll see you next time then.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Yep. Yep, that's all good. All right, so let's have a look at navigating from page to page. So let's start our application with our auth page. So when you actually enter the application, we're going to start not by the home page, but actually here, the authentication page. This is where you put in your password and your email and password. And then from there, we may go to the home page. So imagine, so let's go to authentication page. What we can do is we can put in as the first widget, we can use a scaffold. So scaffold is basically a structure that allows us to build pages. So we can just provide a scaffold widget here in the build function. And then you'll see it's got this body property here. And so this is where we can put the sort of the main contents of the scaffold widget. So as a body, I'm going to put in a column widget here. A column is a bunch of widgets that you put underneath each other. And so let's put a button in here. And when we press on this button, it will theoretically authenticate the user and then navigate the user to the home screen. So we use this widget called the fill button. And we just provide an empty function when you press this button for now. Okay. We will put something else in here later. We're going to say add login function later. And so we want to give this button some text. So as a child, we can just say text, and then we can just say log in. Okay. So what is that going to look like? It's going to look like that. It's just a basic login button. Okay. Maybe we want to make sure that we would put this in the center of our screen. So we're going to put a center widget around that. And in Windows, you can say Control dot, or on macOS, you can use Command dot. And then you can just say wrap it with center. And that's just going to put a center widget around this column widget. And now we've put it nicely in the center here. Okay. Maybe we want to create a place where you can put in your login details. So we can use what's called a text field. And This is where you want to put in your username, maybe another text field for your password. And then above this text field, we want to maybe say username, put a little bit of text above it, and then above the second text field, we might maybe want to say password. And then what will that look like? It will look like this. So you put in your username, your password, and then you click on login, and that should log us into our new widget. Now, how do we actually navigate to a new page when you log in? Well, what we can do is we can do the following. Here in the onPressed function, we can say navigator. Then we say .of. We pass in this build context there. Then we can say push. Okay. And so now we have to provide what's called a route to this navigator function. So we can say something like material page route. And then again, we use this function called basically we are going to provide a route, which is just a fancy wrapper, and inside of this we're just going to say which widgets should be displayed when you click on this button. So here in the builder we can say context, and then we can provide, say, another page, so our home page. Okay. So what's going to happen here is when you click on this button here, all this entire line, all it does is it's going to present our home page, right? So there we go. This is our home page now. So as you can see, what happened was it puts our home page on top of this new page. So this is not the nicest way to do it. So what we will do is our homepage needs some kind of background. Currently, our homepage does not have any background. It's transparent, which is why it looks like this, right? So what we want to do is for our homepage, we want to also create a scaffold, and then provide a body. And so we can do the same thing. We can say a center widget, and then for that we can say a column. And then we can also just create some text, and we can just say, welcome to our home page. So again, here is the login screen, and when you click on that, it just takes you to this thing called welcome to our home page. And if you press back here, it just goes back. So this is a very basic way to navigate from page to page. So as you can see, I have this main function here. In this main function, I've got this main widget here. I just provide the home page. In other words, this is actually quite confusing. I've got homepage there and homepage there, but this means the initial page that gets loaded when you load your application. So that's the first thing you're going to see is the auth page every single time. And then if you look at the auth page here, it's just a column of some text, a text field, and then all this does is it replaces basically this. Sorry, it replaces this with this, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's pretty much like what I aim for today, is just sort of providing a basic way to navigate from page to page, and also just giving a bit of an overview on some of the basics of Dart. So hopefully I achieved that a little bit. Do I have any questions? No? Awesome. Frank, what are your thoughts?
Actually, this is really good. I just love the fact that am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, that's fine. I just love the fact that you really arranged the files very well, File management, I'm just so impressed by that fact, because nothing is actually really confusing, the way how you laid up everything. I think it's one of the things that were giving me some bit of headache.
Absolutely. So one of the most important
Yeah.
things is structuring your project. And I actually want to do an entire lesson on that maybe soon. Just how to structure it in an effective way, because yeah, I've worked with a lot of developers before and projects before, and their projects are confusing.
Yeah, actually, yeah, that's really, really good, because you reach to a point where things become overwhelming because you didn't really structure everything out very well. You have very many folders, you're really stuck, you even don't know where you probably placed your files, Yeah, that sort of junk,
Yeah, and it sometimes makes a difference between a successful project and an unsuccessful project. Is how you structure your project in a way that's going to be tidy, that's going to allow you to keep track of all this information, because there's a lot of information in a project, and if you're not going to clean up after yourself and you're not going to keep things tidy and structured, you're going to get overwhelmed pretty quickly, and then your project might fail because you give up because it's just too much. Or when I work with other developers, they kind of don't know what to do with all this stuff because it's all over the place. So if you structure your project in an effective way, then that could sometimes be the difference between a successful project and an unsuccessful.
Madam Jovia, do you have something to say, at least one word?
Nothing much. Just want to thank you all for putting me into the consideration while doing the thing, because it's my first time on Flutter. I have other language. Yeah, so thank you very much.
No, that's okay. I think it takes a while to even if it's your first time, it takes a while to wrap your head around all these things. And so my advice would just be like, keep on going, keep on learning, even if you are sometimes confused, because I was very confused in the beginning with Flutter. If you just keep on learning and keep on absorbing information, in time everything will make sense, and then and you'll just know how to create apps and stuff.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so Madam Jovia, tomorrow actually at around 5 a.m. I don't know whether you're someone who can manage 5 a.m.
5 a.m. in the morning.
Yep. Because that's according to the Ugandan time. That's okay. Yeah, 5 a.m. actually Ugandan time, because the American time it's going to be 10 p.m.
Yeah. So it's okay. I mean, it's a bit of a difficult time for people in Uganda, but we are also going to have another one tomorrow that we'll record and put on YouTube. So you don't have to intend it, but if you can, it's great. But it will be posted on YouTube for you to look at later if you like.
Okay. So Mr. Robert, do you like wanted to proceed, or
today?
Yeah, we can proceed. Yeah, you can proceed to the end of the session of because we are not yet done actually, because we still really have to ensure that all the pages and the Dart files, the pages that we had created I really interacted with, since the intention here is to deal with Flutter Navigator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I can continue, absolutely. So as you can see, we've got our just a basic homepage that says welcome to our homepage. Now, typically in a homepage, I like to provide a bunch of updates to the user. So a homepage would be somewhere where you can tell the user, hey, this app got updated, or here's a new feature, or sometimes I can put shortcuts to different parts of the application in the homepage. And so let's have a look at what that looks like. So I'm just going to say welcome to our homepage here. And then, okay, let me just have a look here. Okay, so again, this is where we log the user in. Very simple. Now let's make that a little prettier. Let's wrap some padding around it. So padding is just some space around an area. Let's make this 20 pixels around. So you'll see that it's going to look like this now. I've put some padding around it. Let's give it some more. Let's give it 40. Now it looks a little cleaner. What I can also do is I can provide some spacing between these fields. So I can say spacing, and I'm going to say 12. So as you can see now, it's got some spaces between the fields. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give it some kind of title. I'm going to say welcome, or I'm going to say Notes app. Okay, and I'm going to give it a style. I'm going to make this text bigger. So I'm going to say style, text style, and I'm going to say size, font size. Let's make the font size 20. Well, 20 is too small. Let's make it 28. So here we go, Notes app. You put in your username and password. Maybe we want to create a bit of spacing there. So instead of putting the spacing here, because this is a little, I'm saying basically put 12 spacing between every one of these ones. What I'm going to do is I'm going to manually add spacing. So I'm going to say here a size box. So a size box is just a widget that just adds like a bit of spacing or just that's a fixed size. So I'm going to give it a height of say 20 here. Okay. So between the text and the next text, the spacing is going to be 20, and then after this text field and this password is going to be 20 as well, and I'm going to put 20 there as well. So let's see what that's going to look like. That's a little nicer already. Maybe I want to put this all to the left here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say where it says cross-axis alignment.center, let us do the following. Actually, I could just remove the center here. I think it's going to now, oh no, that's not going to work. So actually, let's just keep this basic and just worry about Navigator for now, because that's what basically the lesson is about. So I've created a basic login sort of page here. And once you log in, it's going to take you to a home page, okay? So let's now ensure our home page is actually kind of useful. So I'm going to also provide some text style here for our welcome to our homepage app here. Welcome to our homepage text here. So just text there. Let's also do the same thing where I wrap it with some padding to give it some space on the edges. So again, this is command dot or control dot. You just hover over something, command dot or control dot, and you just say wrap of padding, and that's just going to add some padding around this widget. And then instead of 8 here, we're going to say 40. I'm also going to remove the center widget because it's not necessary. And then we're going to look and we can see that it's there. Now, let me do something a bit better. I'm going to put this app to the side here. And so this will allow us to sort of see it in real time. Okay, so we got our homepage here. And perhaps we want to give some kind of updates to our application here on the homepage. So after this text widget here, we can put this widget called divider widget. And so what's that going to do is just going to put a nice little line at the bottom there. Just give me 1 second again, sorry. Sorry, I've been a bit sick lately. I'm just recovering from that. So sometimes I just have to disconnect the video for a second. So I've got this nice text here that says welcome to our homepage, but maybe we've got an app. We've just put our app name there. Welcome to, let's just call this Notes app. Okay. So there it is. Welcome to Notes app. And then perhaps we can put like a bottom navigation bar here. So when you click on that, it's going to take you to different parts of application, right? So let's see. So Scaffold has a actual bottom sheet, or I think it's a property that's bottom navigation bar. There we go. So in the scaffold, instead of body, I'm going to put this thing called bottom navigation bar there. And then I can provide items here. So this bottom navigation bar has this property called items, and I can just put in a bunch of items here. And then I can create some kind of widget here. So let's just put an icon there. Oops. Let's see what that's going to look like. All right, I have to put at least 2 items there. So let's put another one there called settings. Okay. Okay, I have to provide a label as well. Sorry, I just forgot. I haven't done this in a while. So let's just say this is called notes. Okay, there we go. So I've got 2 little items here at the bottom. So when I click on that one, I want the user to go to the notes page, the note list page, and settings. Maybe I want the user to go to the settings page. Okay. Now I've provided an icon button here, but I actually don't have to do that. I could just provide an icon here. I just going to remove that, and I'm going to remove this here. Okay, there we go. That's better. Yep, this is better. All right, so let's have a look. When we click on the notes page, I want the user to navigate somewhere. Okay. So let me just see. There should be a function here. So there's an on-tap function here. Okay. So let's do that. So we provide this on-tap function there. So when the user taps on either one of these. If the user taps on this index would be 0. If the user taps on that, the index would be 1. So now I can say switch index. Okay. So if the index is 0, I want to navigate to the notes page. So how do I navigate again? Well, let's look at the auth page. We've got this function here that allows us to navigate. And so if we go to our home page, we want to put something like that in there. So when we go to our when the index is 0, we want to go to our notes page, notes list page. Actually, let's put the home page there as well. So I'm going to say the first thing is called home, and then we say home there. So we're going to have a home icon there, like that. And then when the user navigates to clicks on, when the user clicks on that one, so that's in index 0. Okay. We want the user to go to a home page. Okay. And then when it's 2, we want the user to go to the settings page, but we actually haven't created the settings page yet. So let's create one. I'm just going to copy the note page here, and I'm going to call the settings page. And then I call the settings page. Okay. And then remember, I have to put this in my pages.dart as well. So I'm going to export it here. I'm going to call the settings page there. And then basically, let's see if it works. So if I go to notes, I go to there, yep. And then settings page should take me to the settings page, and home page should take me back to itself. See, it takes me back to the same page. All right, so very simple. So notes is where all our sort of to-do list notes will be. And then settings maybe just be like, if we want to change the theme of our app or something like that, we'll just have it in there. All right, so let's create a notes page and then a settings page. And also I will show you how the back button works. So if we go to our note list page, again, we just provide a scaffold. And then in the scaffold body, we provide a column. And then as the children of that column, we will put a back button at the top. So we're going to say icon button dot filled, and then we're going to say when you press on that button, we're going to navigate back. So we can just say navigator dot off, and then we can say push. Also, back. I think it's called back. Pop. Sorry, pop. And pop. What pop does is it takes us back one round. Okay. So we're just going to give it some kind of icon, and so we can say icons dot back, or we can say arrow back. There we go. Let's see what that's going to look like. Yeah, so we've got a back arrow there, as you can see. When you click on that arrow, it's just going to call this function navigator.off context.pop. And so kind of cool. But let's also, again, put some padding around it just to make it a little nicer. Make that 40 again, like earlier. And so there we go. Let's go back. All right, so here we want to put all our notes for our app. So we're going to put a bunch of notes here, and then the user can select on one note and then change the note or add maybe another note. So to do that, maybe we want to wrap this entire top thing here in a row and then just put a little plus button there that allows us to add a new note. So We wrap that in a row. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create, instead of an arrow back, we're going to say add. There's just going to be a plus. We're going to remove this contents of that function there. And so what you'll see is you'll see a back and a plus. And now I've accidentally changed. This should be a column. That should be a row. There we go. Like that. And then we want to maybe put some space between these two. So I'm going to basically do the following. I'm going to put a spacer widget between these two. And a spacer is a widget that's going to fill the entire space as much as possible. So this is going to be on the left side, then it's going to fill the space as much as possible, and this is going to put this on the right side, so the add button. So you'll see actually what it looks like here. Going to put it to the back there. So this is where we will add more nodes to our list here. And if we want to go back, we can do that like so. Okay. So let's have a look. Yeah, I think. What do you think, Frank? Should I continue, or you think we should wrap it up and maybe for our next lesson actually proceed on creating this full-on Notes app?
Actually, yeah, I love the suggestion. Love the suggestion. It's really good. A good suggestion.
Yeah, because actually
So,
that'll be a good starting point for indie developers. Maybe we can create. Maybe the video next would be actually. I can actually use it to prepare for the next one. Basically, to create a basic note-taking app from scratch, a complete scratch, where with navigation, backend, everything.